Hey folks, Ace TCG here, and in today's video we are going to be looking at some EX1 gameplay. This is really exciting for me because outside of streams we haven't had EX1 on the channel, but yeah, it's pretty darn exciting. I am on the right here using the green OTK, so the Grand Kawagmon OTK with that Palmon that's going to give jamming, and some little spicy pieces that came out for green in BT6. And on the left, Danny is from Locals and he is using Diaboromon from EX1, which is exciting for me to play against, because I'm also building the deck, so looking into that is going to be really cool for me. I win the dice roll and then we're just going to go ahead and set up here. So let's get straight into the gameplay and see who can pull it off this time. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be going first here. My hand's looking pretty good. I'm going to hatch a Minomon, which is a bit unfortunate because we want the Yokomon, but luckily I do have the Jamming Palmon, which is what we want. And then I also get another key piece for me, which is Weedmon. It's a really nice card to be able to go into. Danny's going to go ahead and hatch a Sunamon. This is the Draw Sunamon, and then he Digivolves into the Draw Keramon, which is a pretty darn nice card. And then he plays an Arata Sonata, which is a really efficient card for Diaboromon. And that's because as soon as he has it out, he's able to gain some memory if he has it unidentified in his trash, and he can consistently get those Diaboromon tokens out. I'm going to hard play my own tamer here in the form of Mimi, which is really good for me. I need to be going to 3 as often as possible to get max value from my deck. Danny is going to go ahead and Digivolve here into a Kurosayamon. This is from EX1. And then he Digivolves into an Infermon, which you'll have seen before if you have played Diamond before. I hatch a Yokomon, which is the egg that I want to see, and Digivolve it into an Agumon. This isn't the rookie that I want to be seeing, but I'm just happy to have it really in this situation. I really need to now be thinking about what I want to be doing in general with my stacks. I can see I have the Lilamon in hand there, so 9 times out of 10 I'm going into it, which I do here, which is just super nice because I can use Mimi effect now to raise the Agumon if I want to. But I think I make a little bit of a misplay here and I just don't bring it out, and I decide to go into a Weedmon for 1 instead, because all I was thinking at this time was, oh, I can memory choke him because Arata will only give 1 memory if he has unidentified, and he doesn't. Danny raises and goes into the EX1 Diaboromon, and then uses Arata Sonata's effect. Because he Digivolved into a Diaboromon, he can play a Diaboromon token, which is just really nice value. He then draws from the Keramon because he has played a Diaboromon, which he already has out, and then both of his Diaboromons here will have blocker, which is pretty darn cool. This is actually a little bit of a bad matchup for Danny, because I have ways to be able to get around it, which we're gonna see, and it's a bit of a pain for him because he has some inheritable effects there that's going to give him pluses when things are destroyed, but I run Nidhogg in this list, so unfortunately it's not going to be destroyed. I'm going to use the Lilamon effect here to rest that Diaboromon, and Danny's just letting me know about the Kurosayamon effect, which is when a Diaboromon is deleted, he can restand that Diaboromon there. So I Digisorption into a Blossomon for free here, which is bonkers. I forgot to add the 1 memory from the Weedmon earlier when I Digibursted from Lilamon, so I go ahead and do that. And then at this point I'm just looking at my hand, I'm thinking, what do I actually want to do? So I decide to pay 3 to go into Grand Kawagmon, and then at this point I go, wait, actually those Diaboromons have blocker, I don't really want to be going into the Grand Kawag here, so I'll just go ahead and use the Nidhogg effect here. I don't think this was the cleanest play. I could have just went straight into the Nidhogg and then gave Danny less memory, and then went into the Grand Kawag next turn, or just re-raised and built a bigger stack, but at the end of the day it's not too bad. So the Nidhogg will put Danny to 4, Weedmon will put him back down to 3, but then the Arata Sonata effect will go off, in that he has an unidentified in his trash now, so he goes ahead and gains 1 more memory. Then he hatches the Sunamon here that gives power in inheritables, and then goes into another Keramon here from EX1, which is cool. He then decides to hard play an Izzy, and he reveals an Infermon, a Tumon, and then gets unfortunate and actually gets a white Diaboromon, so he's not going to gain that memory back from the Izzy effect. However, it's still nice to be able to put the cards back in order, so he puts the Tumon as the 3rd card, Infermon as the 2nd, and then the Diaboromon as the top one, because from what his hand must be, or from what his choices were, he really wanted to make sure that he can get that Diaboromon. He's just looking at his plays now, and I think I can see a Mechanorimon in hand here, but I see that Ultimate Flare, and that's what he decides to go with. He pays 8, puts me to 8, and then Ultimate Flare is my Grand Kawagmon, which he'll Digivolve it twice, and then because it'll go into the Palmon will then be destroyed by that Ultimate Flare effect. which in turn is kind of just like a pseudo Gaia Force here, which you can't really argue with because Gran Kawagumon would have been swinging for 2, which could be potent. I'm going to hatch a Yokomon and then go into a Tentomon here. I have a lot of memory to play with and quite a big hand, so I decide to play 1 for Weedmon here. Drawing another Nidhogg here, which is just Danny's not good for Danny at all. I decide to pay 3 to go into a Lilamon here. I think just at this situation, it's still a good ultimate to go into. But realistically, I probably want to build a stack here into Gran Kawagumon in my raising is where I'd normally think. I'm remembering here to check with Nidhogg, which is something I actually forget to do a lot. I'll pay 3 for Tentomon. I actually get the 1 Digivolve cost Kabuterimon blocker for green, so I go into that, but I've actually made quite a big misplay here in that I'm not utilising Mimi's effect. I could have just used Mimi to raise that Lilamon and go into a Gran Kawagumon instead of doing the Tentomon into Kabuterimon play here, and then push a lot of damage at Danny and have lethal potentially next turn, guaranteed. I did use the option into a Blossomon for free here, and then Digivolve for 3 into a Gran Kawagumon and raising. Danny's going to gain 1 memory from Arata, but even after making the misplay and not respecting what Mimi does, I'm still in a very good spot here. I have high DP power Digimon already in play here, and a Gran Kawagumon and raising. I'm showing potential lethal to Danny, so he kind of needs to do something here to deal with that if he can. He pays 2 for Kurosairamon from EX1, which is quite an interesting card, because if you are using the deck for the blocker element to it, you can block and then restand your big blocker and stuff, which is really cool. But like I said, Danny's having a little bit of a think here. He's in a weird situation because that Gran Kawagumon can check for 3 security, which is just absolutely nutty. We can see as an Arata Sonata there, but I also saw that he had a Mechanorimon, so he could potentially be thinking here, I'm gonna go into Mechanorimon and then I can block that Gran Kawagumon, which is a fair play. But I do have that Lilamon underneath the Gran Kawagumon here, so I could potentially only Digiburst 1 and then still have that Lilamon racing. So he does that, he hard plays the Mechanorimon that we saw there. I'm going to stand my Nidhoggmon and Blossomon, raise the Gran Kawagumon, and then I use the Gran Kawagumon's effect here. But I do go with what I was just saying, that I just Digiburst 2 to gain 1 security check. I'll gain 2k from the Yokomon and a memory from Weedmon. Check security with Gran Kawagumon, and Lilamon's effect is going to rest the Mechanorimon. So this is 2 checks. Nothing coming up there of any worry. Swing with the Blossomon, swing with the Nidhogg, and actually from that Nidhogg swing he gets a Catastrophe Cannon here, so he can de-Digivolve 2 onto one of my Digimon. It's not particularly going to do anything for me now. He decides to choose the Gran Kawagumon here, but I do have the Diaboromon in hand, so I just pay 2 to Digivolve into Diaboromon on top of Mimi, and then swing for game with the Diaboromon. So we've got game start for game 2 here. Danny's decided to go first. He goes ahead and he hatches that Tsunamon with the power and goes into the Keramon here that draws, and then he hard plays the Keramon that allows him to look at the top cards of his deck, and I believe it's that he can take a Tamer and an Unidentified here, which is pretty good because he managed to get that Arata. Now he's thinking, I know Danny's list and he's only running the one-off of the Diaboromon promo, so he's pretty tempted to take it, but he needs the Kurosairamon here, so he takes the Kurosairamon and the Arata Sonata and then puts the rest on the bottom of his deck. And then I go ahead and hatch a Yokomon, go into the Palmon with jamming. So yeah, I'm in a very sticky situation here from looking at my hand. I'm missing a champion and I need to get some stuff on board. So I decide to just hard play a Blossomon for 7, which isn't the worst play because I'm able to get an ultimate out there, and Daniel had given me 3. He pays 2 to go into the Kurosairamon, and then he's going to play an Arata Sonata for free because of that Kurosairamon effect, which is really good value. Looking at Danny's hand here, I think the main thing he's missing here is a Mega. He checks security with the Keramon for 2k, hits a Palmon for 2k here, so that just trades. You expect that when you're swinging with a rookie. I think he just wanted to get a little bit of that chip damage in early, which is always good. He decides to go into the Infermon for 3 here, putting me to 1, which is again another sticky situation. I draw for turn and I get another Blossomon, which is not ideal. So I raise the Palmon here. Looking at my hand, I don't think I have a Gran Kawagumon either. My Megas in this list both need me to have sources, so having to hard play an ultimate is definitely not ideal. I think at this point I was thinking about going into Nidhogg, which I do now, and this is because I have Chaosmon in hand, so if I can go into the Nid and then Chaosmon whatever he plays next turn, that could be really valuable for me and I'm not going to fall behind. So yeah, I do that. Danny hatches another Sunamon here with the power ones. These are actually really annoying to get, so if you don't have Sunamons and you're going to play Diaboromon, try and look through your stuff and get these. He remembers he gains 1 memory from the Arata Sonata effect because he has that Keramon in his drop, which is another reason why he swung with that Keramon earlier. He Digivolves into a Keramon in his Raising from EX, and then he goes ahead and hard plays another one of those on-play Keramons that we saw earlier. He's going to look at the top 5 cards of his deck. No Tamer this time, but he can choose from among them and take what he needs from his hand, which is really effective. So just looking at them, he decides to take the Infermon from EX1, but he's also looking at that Kurosarumon there and looking at his hand. But he decides to put in the back. We could see from his hand there that he has another rookie, another Kurosarumon, so he can potentially rebuild if he needs to. But he's in quite a good spot here, because I am not. He Digivolves for 2 onto the Kurosarumon in his Raising, and then he goes into that Infermon from EX1, which we just saw him grab there from that Keramon effect. I'm going to draw for turn, hatch, and I actually kept the 2-cost Agramon here, and this was so that I could potentially, do this Digivolve now on top of my Raising. I got really unlucky here. I swung with my Nidhoggmon thinking, okay, I can go into Chaosmon after. Nidhogg has 13k, it has more survivability, but he had an Armageddonmon, so it didn't matter. My champions are coming through now, so I'll Digivolve for 1 on a Weedmon in my Raising, 1 for Kabuterimon on the Palmon, and then 3 for a Lilamon in Raising. So I'm back in the game, baby. Things are flying. But I think even now at this point, I'm actually now missing a Mega. Danny's going to go ahead, draw for turn, raises Infermon. Still in a decent spot, but he's having a similar issue to what I'm about to be facing now, and that he doesn't actually have a Mega, which is a big pain for him because he hasn't actually seen one from either of the Keramon on-play effects, which again is just a big pain for him. He goes ahead and Digivolves here for 2 into a Kurosarumon, and then he's going to hard play a Arata Sonata for 3, putting me to 2. Just looking at my hand now, I'm in a much better spot than I was at, which is great. I have some options to do things. I have the Lilamon, so I'm going to use the Lilamon effect to burst the Argamon and the Weedmon. I gain a memory from the Weedmon effect. And I'm in a pretty good spot. I can decide to start swinging into his things and bouncing back. I was really bad, but now because Danny hasn't had a Mega, he hasn't been able to capitalize on the fact that I bricked a little bit. I'm just reading through some of his effects here, a little bit worried that some shenanigans are going to go off. But I pay 3 to go into a Lilamon, and you get to do some of that really good green stuff here. I use the Lilamon's effect to Digiburst the Kabuterimon and the Yokomon, and then Yokomon effect will give it plus 2k as well, which is super cool because it means that now I can swing into his ultimates, and both my Lilamons will be able to survive these swings. So I go ahead and use the Lilamon with the plus 2k to swing at his Infermon with 7, and then use the other Lilamon, which is 8k, to swing at the 6k Infermon. So I'm in a pretty decent spot here, and then I pay 2 to play the Argamon, but then he'll gain 2 memory from the Arata Sonatas, which I did forget about, but still, because it doesn't matter how much I give him, it's still nice to be able to cap that. He goes into the I can never remember this thing, Big Bearmon for black that costs 2, and then he goes into a Keramon in his Raising here, which is the Draw Keramon. He's just looking through his hand. We can see he's got another Catastrophe Cannon there, and that looks like an Ultimate Flare, which would be pretty darn stinky. But at the end of the day, it's not too terrible. I'd still have 1 Lilamon up and running. So Danny goes ahead and he's got the Ultimate Flare in his hand here, and he decides to go with it. So he's on 2, he's going to put me to 6. He chooses the Lilamon, which will also get rid of that Argamon from that Ultimate Reflect. And he's still in a pretty unfortunate place where he just hasn't been able to get a Mega here, which just means he hasn't been able to capitalize or beat me because of it, just really showing how important Megas are. I hatch a Yokomon and go into a Lilamon, which is great because if I Digi-burst it, I can get it back to hand. Pay 1 to go into Weedmon here, and at this point I'm just thinking if I can build a big stack, that'd be super cool. But I think I'm still missing Megas here. I swing with the Lilamon and I hit into his second Armageddonmon, which in most lists are only running 2 Armageddonmon, and Danny says himself, well, there goes them, so he doesn't have any more, so that makes me happy. I hard play a Tentamon and reveal the limited Argamon Ultimate, which is just a pretty decent card. yeah, Danny's just talking about the fact that his Armageddonmons are gone, both of them being there, which just big stink. I go into a Kabuterimon for 1, use Digisorption for the Agumon, which is really cool because it's just free. Again, it's pretty darn bonkers. And then I play another Tentamon here, and then the Tentamon reveals a Mimi, so that actually goes to the bottom of the deck. I don't get to add that to my hand, which is a little bit sad, the big Sag. Danny gains a memory here because of the Errata Sonatas, and as we can see there, Danny's actually finally drew a level 6. He has the rare Diaboromon in his hand, so he goes into that for 3, but we were joking around here because he actually doesn't have a very good stack for Diaboromon. However, because of the when Digivolving effect of that Diaboromon and the fact he has 2 Errata Sonatas, he actually can use 3 of the tokens for Diaboromon here for free, which is really scary because it can just come back and immediately have loads of attackers, so I have to deal with that or win before I lose, which is just a big pain. But it's still a little bit unfortunate here that Danny actually doesn't have any Armageddonmons left. It took him this long, and now he has to think about what I'm doing with my board. I think we were talking about this at the time, and like we just talked back and forth when we were playing, and I think the play here would be for Danny to swing his Diaboromon into my Agumon here, because that way then there's just no way that I'm going to be able to go into that and to deal with stuff. But he's just having to think about what he wants to do here, back and forth, just going through it. Again, he doesn't have a very good stack there for the Diaboromon, and it's a little bit of a sticky situation for him. Right now, it's still just that back and forth. We can see he has that Catastrophe Cannon in hand, and I think he's tempted to use it here, but I still think that the play here would have been use the Diaboromon to swing into the Agumon. He goes into the Catastrophe Cannon and digivolves my Agumon twice, and then he gets another Diaboromon from that, and that's because of the Catastrophe Cannon's effect here. Now, in that situation, Danny might have been thinking, oh, I do have lethal next turn and stuff, but I'm now going to go into Granko Agumon because the Blossomon allows me to play for free. Use the Granko Agumon effect to gain +2 security checks. I'll give 2k to the Granko Agumon, get the Lilamon back to hand and gain a memory from the Weedmon. Granko Agumon swings for 3 checks here at 13, gets them all out here. But we also, I just remind Danny that the Diaboromon effect goes off, but however, I still have the Tentamon there, just swinging, and that's going to swing for game because Danny doesn't have the EX1 Diaboromon here. And yeah, that is the end of the games. That's a 2-0 there for me there with the green OTK. On the day of the locals, I only lost to a Jessmon there. I didn't draw my Nidhogg's, and you kind of need it, and Jessmon doing Jessmon shenanigans, you know how it is. I don't actually have the pictures of what the deck lists are for this video, I do apologise. However, I will be doing deck profiles myself on both Diaboromon, and I'll be doing a deck profile of an updated OTK green deck very soon, so definitely check those out when they are posted, and thank you very much for watching and supporting the channel as always.